This is such a short line, one sentence of Luke's gospel, and yet it opens up a wonderful practice of refreshing our lives, of renewing our lives. Jesus goes out, he withdraws to wilderness places, separate places, uninhabited places to pray, and he does it often, regularly, at the point when the crowds are pressing, when life is busy and intense and hard and difficult. Jesus chooses to go out regularly to the wild places, to a wilderness, to be apart. This is the line that speaks of when Jesus gets refreshed. Now, I know, because it would probably be my response if someone started to say this, but if I say, just go out and pray more, then the likelihood is that that voice will just fly past us and nothing will change, because for many, that is a regular voice in our own hearts anyway, our own heads anyway, just pray more. But there is in this line in Luke's gospel a way to pray as a refreshing act of living, much more than as a sort of guilt-induced act or call. This word to you does not simply come as pray more, but opens up a different experience of prayer, one that feeds you and doesn't drain you. Jesus goes out into the wilderness to be refreshed when it is hard. And God can speak with us. He can speak with us anywhere. He can speak with us at any time. But Jesus chooses to go out into the wilderness to pray. This is a regular practice of Jesus that helps him to live when things got too much. This message is a part of a series across these weeks on hopeful places, exploring the ministry of Jesus in Galilee through Luke's gospel. And this morning's hopeful place is the wilderness, the places apart. How does this practice of Jesus going out into the wilderness to pray point to hopeful places for us? As you saw in the video, it was a very poor video there. I purposely took time out on Friday to go out into the wilderness. That's the closest thing I could get, that short notice to a wilderness. But it was there. It was apart from things, a separate place where I could be out in the open with God. And I purposely sought to understand what I was feeling as I was doing it, so that I could better approach this single line in Luke's gospel. And something of what I found in this approach lies in 3 reasons why I find it difficult to separate like this. And I may be completely different from you, but I suspect this might lie for some of us also altogether. There is one understanding that also comes through, though, in the approach here that helps me to overcome these 3 reasons for putting off the act of going into the wilderness. Briefly, the 3 reasons that I found that were getting in the way of me going out to meet with God in the wilderness, whatever that means for you to pray, are these. First of all, guilt. The guilt of having the possibility of taking time out to go and pray when others have so many pressures on them, restrictions that make such a gift difficult. I am utterly aware of the privilege that it is to be in the ministry that I'm in, and the possibilities of wasting time with God that are given to me. That's a good Benedictine phrase, I think, but it's a thought of wasting time with God, and that beautiful phrasing about coming to pray. Sometimes we can make prayer hard, and taking time out for prayer can seem selfish, time apart when others can't take that time so easily. And part of what I found on Friday was to remember that prayer is a gift. This is a gift that is given to us, and there is a call just to receive the gift that prayer is. There's a moment in Paul's letter to the Philippians that he puts it beautifully. He says, don't be anxious about things. Just go and pray. With thanksgiving, present what you're meaning to God, and his peace will be given to you. Guard your hearts and minds in Jesus. It's a gift. Prayer is simply a gift that is offered. And at times we simply need the encouragement to take up the gifts. And let this morning be such an encouragement to you to take up this gift of prayer. Second reason that struck me for not going out to pray lay with this: I'm too busy to do this. It won't be productive. I'm not going to get that thing done, or that thing done, or that thing done. I tried to analyze as honestly as I could what I was feeling so I could better understand this line in Luke's gospel. And that is one of the reasons I felt for not great to pray. I was too busy. Can't take the time. The sermon's pressing. I need to get out there and work it out before I can pray. Stupid. And immediately my thoughts went to the story later in Luke's gospel of Martha and Mary, and they're at the home in Bethany. And Martha's getting in the kitchen, she's in the kitchen getting everything ready while Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus listening. And Mary complains, Lord, don't you care my sister's likely to do the work myself? Tell her to help me. And Jesus says to her, Martha, Martha, you're worried about many things, but just one thing is needed. And Mary's chosen it. Rightly so, in past years we've sought to value what Martha brings, but maybe there are times to just simply be a Mary, come and sit at the feet of Jesus and find rest in that. Anyway, that's what came to my head. The willingness to take time apart. The third reason is harder. And it is that when we choose purposely to go and be separate for a time with God, all the noise in our life is suddenly removed and we're with God. Well, a long time ago, before I was married, I had a flat, and I used to, after work, I headed back to the flat, got into the flat, immediately turned the TV on so that there was noise in the place. I just had noise around the flats. I needed the noise around me. Sometimes we can be like that with God. Turn up the volume of everything around us, of what we are doing, so that we're not hearing God, so that we're not in that vulnerable, daunting, unsettling place of just being with God. But then I remember who it is that meets us in the alone places when we go out to pray. It is the Lord who is my shepherd, who gives me the words of Psalm 23 to speak, of being fed in green pastures, of being taken to living water, of being taken through the valleys, of knowing goodness and love as my friends, of cups overflowing, and of being in the house of the Lord. And there are times when I need to hear this and let the noise of the world fall away. And this line from Luke's gospel took me to that commitment to go into a place apart and let this one, the shepherd, my shepherd, speak with me again. And in that wee podcast from earlier, and again, for the third time, my apologies for the sound quality, and it's there is a moment for me which turned my understanding. And it's an understanding I wouldn't have got if I just read the passage. It's that moment when I realized that the prayers were coming towards me. From what I could see around me, God was speaking towards me. I didn't need to make prayer happen. God was speaking through the wind in my face, through the mud in the ground, through the icy path with the water flowing under. The prayers were coming towards me. And I thought of Jesus' experience in the wilderness in Luke 4 when he faces these three temptations. And I saw that in each of the temptations, the experience of Jesus is with the physical place around him, the stone, the high place, even Jerusalem. And then I went to other passages, to the Psalms, and then settled on Isaiah 35 that I read earlier. And I saw the landscape giving to Isaiah the words to speak of what God was doing. I could see these words taking shape in the wilderness that he walks, the deserts that's around me, the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. You can see crocuses bursting into bloom, and our life will be like that when God is fully come. Our lives will rejoice and shout for joy. All Lebanon will be given it. They will see the glory of the Lord, the splendor of our God. His words flow from what is around them, the landscape around them. The prayers flow from what is around them towards them. You don't speak and pray like that unless you've walked in these places and the prayers have come towards you. The landscape is not neutral. And I realized that why Jesus goes out into the wilderness to pray and doesn't just sit where he prays. We could all sit here and just pray and God is going to hear us. But we want to hear God. The reason I think Jesus goes out into the wilderness to pray and doesn't just sit where he is is to be apart from the noise, apart from the busyness, apart from the hard times, and allows God to bring his word to us. And that's why Jesus goes to these places to be refreshed, because God comes to us. The Father comes to him and addresses us in his prayers. You don't need to carry the prayers to him. Well, God can speak to us in any way and at any time. In this act of withdrawing to a desert place, a wilderness, a place apart, God can speak to us afresh in the physical places, in the stones, in the hills, in the frozen water, in the high places, in the crocus, in the streams in the desert. There is a pattern of prayer, an opening to God's word that is life-giving, life-refreshing, life-renewing. And so with all of our procrastinations in place, Jonathan shared the word procrastinations with me again this week, and I enjoyed seeing it, so I'm seeing it here. With all our procrastinations in place again, the guilt, the busyness, the vulnerabilities of being open to God. This word in Luke 5 of Jesus going out into the wilderness to pray, this hopeful place of wilderness, of separating for a moment, this time apart, this going into the landscape around us becomes a moment to be renewed and refreshed, because suddenly we can begin to hear again God over the noise of our living. God comes towards us in prayer. And each time we get past the reasons not to go, and we go, we are blessed. So I would pray you take this postcard somewhere, just wander somewhere where there's no noise, and let God speak to you. Let God come to you and speak to you. And then if you can, write it and pass it on to the next generation. That'd be fantastic to do that. Let's pray.